Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jack, and today I'm going to be giving you my top 10 favourite directors of all time. So I've been away on a little break, just refreshing myself a bit over summer and coming up with some new ideas for the channel. But I'm back with a big one today, and also doing this with my good old YouTube mates, Brian Lomax, Clayton at Ages of Film, and also being joined by our good friend Jason at Backtrack Cinema, who is a massive action movie, horror movie buff. So he's going to bring a lot of interesting insight to the discussion as well. If you're familiar with my channel at all, you'll probably know of the other guys. We do quite a lot of videos here together. So we're going to have some fun discussion around this, and I'll leave you guys all of the links and that sort of stuff for their videos once they go live as well, because we are planning to do this all at the same time. But yeah, really interesting group of guys, got so much to say on film, so I promise you you'll have a lot of fun with their videos too. So this is not going to so much be a discussion about the objectively best directors of all time, most influential, biggest pioneers, biggest body of work. Nothing like that. This is very much just our personal favourites, directors that have resonated, connect with us the most, and constantly deliver films that we go back to time and time again. So that's pretty much how we're all compiling our own lists here. And I'm sure we're going to do a stream or something afterwards, get together and discuss and debate our choices. So do join in on the fun with that, and let me know down in the comments section what you think of my choices, and let me know your favourite directors as well. So I'm going to give you my top 10 favourites, and also I will give you my favourite film from each of these directors too. So let's get straight into this, starting off at number 10. Number 10 for me is going to be Denis Villeneuve. Definitely one of the most exciting directors working today, I think. Ever since I saw Arrival back in 2016, I really took notice of this guy, and I think he's done nothing but build on and get better with every single project that he's worked on. You know, he's one of those directors as well that I think has a real talent for world building, creating these immersive stories, and just finding the best way to pull them off, especially for the big screen. You know, historically, movies like Dune were very difficult to adapt from those books. You know, David Lynch attempted it and didn't do a particularly good job, I don't think. And somehow Villeneuve managed to get it right for a really broad audience as well. It wasn't just for sci-fi nerds like myself. You know, I went out with a group of friends last year and we were all absolutely blown away by it. I do think also that, especially now, there is a bit of a move over to streaming, and people are wondering about whether there is relevance to keep cinemas alive. But I think the experience that a director like Villeneuve brings really is designed for IMAX, for the big screen. Real experiences, taking you to another place. And that's how his films are meant to be watched, I think. And there's no one that can really do that like him right now. So I'm glad to see that people are still very excited about his films and the projects he's got coming up. As for my favourite film of his, it would be Blade Runner 2049, just because of what a big surprise it was for me. I'm a huge fan of the original, and I loved how that movie ended, and I thought, oh, does Blade Runner really need a sequel? I thought, you know, even though it's a trusted director, I just didn't really feel there was a need for it. But no, Villeneuve, I think he found a way to really kind of broaden the story, expand on everything that was set up on the original and build on it. Great way to continue on the character stories and the new ones that he brought in, and just obviously the technical advances we've had over the years as well, made just for such a visually striking film. And I thought the whole experience was just absolutely incredible. So yeah, still my favourite movie to date from him. Loved his work, and definitely one of the directors that I'm most excited about working today. Number 9 for me is Steven Spielberg, a director I think is going to be on most people's top 10s. I nearly did have a moment of madness though before filming this. I was chatting with the guys and I was like, oh, I don't know if Spielberg's going to make my top 10 list. You know, I've loved a lot of his movies, don't get me wrong. But when I look at my favourites of his, they don't quite reach those heights that some of the directors above this, some of their work just hits me a little bit more. But as I was looking through my Letterboxd list of films I'd seen of his, I was like, I've got to include him because he's just done so much good stuff over so many years. The thing is with Spielberg, he's such a wonderful director because he has a real talent for connecting with people of any age and on any subject. Like, whoever you are, if you're a film fan, there'll be something Spielberg's done that resonates with you. And obviously, if you look at him in the past, just been such an important person in pop culture for film. So many big blockbusters he's been involved in: Jurassic Park, E.T., the Indiana Jones franchise, Jaws, and has just shown massive versatility as well. Done a lot of really serious movies like Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan. So he really is a jack of all trades. He understands film, he understands people and relationships, I think, most importantly, and that's why his films, I think, connect to so many people on a real emotional level. So his influence over cinema over the last 50 years now is absolutely undeniable. As for my favourite personally, it would still have to be Jaws. I find it such an interesting film just because of all of the trouble when they had in production getting this movie together. It's infamous now, all of the stories about all of the issues they had. It sounded like it could have been a disaster, really, but in the end we got this absolutely incredible horror film, and it's one that every time I watch it I love it more. I always find something new to appreciate about it. It's got great characters, really great structure about it, and I just think it's a great experience. One of the best horror movies ever made, and I come back to it every other year or so. So yeah, that film in itself brings Spielberg right up for me, but after I kind of came to my senses, I realised he had to make this top 10 list. Number 8 for me is going to be Ridley Scott, a director that I've actually managed to see his entire filmography now. We did a full ranking with the guys that I'm doing this with recently. And I did maybe sound a little bit critical about some of his films, just because I think over the years he had dips in quality. But I do think, that's inevitable. When you made so many movies over so many decades, you take chances in different genres, not everything pays off. But I just think when he's working in his area of expertise, when he's bringing his A game, there's nobody really like him. He's created some unbelievably good films over the years, particularly for me in the sci-fi genre. Again, like Villeneuve, he was kind of the man back in the day for sci-fi, I think, especially stuff like Blade Runner and Alien, two of my all-time favourite movies. He just really has a talent for world building, very immersive stories, and just creating a realistic feeling about them. No matter how big scale the story is, no matter, how outrageous or bold it is with its ideas, he always manages to kind of keep that very grounded, realistic feeling that pulls you in and lets you relate to the characters in these situations. And I think that's the kind of real unique flair that Ridley Scott brings to his films. Alien for me is still his best film. I've talked about Alien a number of times on the channel because I love the franchise, love the world. Obviously, it helped that he did have a great alien design from Geiger and had a great cast, and obviously the stars aligned around that time. It was so early in his career as well, but I really think he was the right man for the job back then, and I don't think there's another director that could have pulled off Alien the way that he did. This is a movie that stood the test of time. There's a reason we're still talking about it now. It's still getting sequels. It's an incredible film, one of the best of all time, and that alone cements Ridley Scott as one of my absolute favourites. Number 7 for me is Alfred Hitchcock. Now, this is a director I think that would be in the conversation of objectively one of the best, just because of his influence, especially within the thriller, suspense genre. There was a reason that he was coined the master of suspense. He had such a talent for creating anticipation around a scenario, creating dread, and just bringing that great atmosphere to a movie, which made them really exciting, really put them on your edge of your seat. And especially back in the day that he was doing them, when there were limitations on technology and filmmaking techniques, he was just a real standout of that day. Particularly in his heyday, the late 40s, 50s, even to the early 60s. He just created some really brilliant films, and he really works for me personally, just because I love kind of confined location movies, with small casts, and just kind of working out a little mystery. I really like those kind of films, and he did a number of those. They just hit all the right buttons for me. And I always say about Hitchcock, I think he's a really good gateway director into older cinema. Like, I have a lot of friends that are a bit apprehensive whenever I suggest older films to them, because I do understand that before, maybe like, I guess maybe before the 70s, like, there was a bit of a difference in pacing, and just the way films were made was a little bit different back then. But I think Hitchcock in particular is one that, if you like a good thriller, if you sit down in the right circumstance, lights down, glass of whiskey, and really get yourself involved, I promise you'll be hooked with one of his best movies, because some of them just came together so nicely and created such a great movie-going experience. So I love his body of work, love going back to revisit his films. Still, for me, his best is Rear Window. I think that's just when everything came together, the stars aligned, and he just made his perfect film. Helped, obviously, by a great cast. Jimmy Stewart, and always got the most beautiful blonde actresses of the time, Grace Kelly, in this film. And I can just watch this one time and time again. Great suspense, great little mystery, kind of working out what's going on, piecing it all together. Is he, isn't he? You know, kind of creating that sort of paranoia around the situation. And I love the location of that film, in that courtyard. Just a couple of years ago, I was living in a situation that was very similar to this, in a block of flats with a little area like that, when you do watch people over the road and you kind of make up stories about who they are or what they're like. And that's why I just find this film so much fun to watch. Definitely Hitchcock's masterpiece, I think. But yeah, if you're interested in older cinema and you haven't delved into that, if you're a younger movie fan, highly recommend all the great stuff from Hitchcock. Number 6 for me, going with Christopher Nolan. Knew I'd have to include him on my list here, because Brian would probably disown me if he didn't get a look in. But no, one of the best directors of the 21st century. There's a reason why his films have been bigged up to no end, because he's done so much amazing work. And I do think, though, sometimes as a film lover, there is a reluctance to keep bigging up Nolan, just because, you know, he's had so much attention over the years. It feels like there's only so many times you could talk about The Dark Knight, about Inception. Yes, they are amazing films, but you just kind of get that sense of wanting to kind of bring more attention to other great films as well. And because there is kind of a sense of fanboyism around, Nolan, the Dark Knight trilogy. Not mentioning any names, of course, Brian. But he is amazing. He's done so many good films, and ones that really work for me. You know, I watch so many of his films each year. There's no way I could not include him on this list. And I think the interesting thing about Nolan, which I like, is that whilst they are, you know, incredibly complex, a lot of his films, he never loses focus on the important things, like the characters, the emotion, the core story that's there. So you don't have to always understand every little detail, every little complexity in order to kind of enjoy the whole thing. Like, that's a common complaint about Interstellar, you know, the third act, that it kind of goes a bit crazy and gets a little bit complex and strange, and that puts a lot of people off. But you don't have to understand that in depth, I don't think, to fully enjoy that movie or anything else from his filmography. So, no, absolutely love Nolan. My personal favourite is actually Memento. Still my favourite to this day. I watch this one the most. I like it just because it's a little bit grittier than his other films. It was kind of what the movie that really put Nolan, I think, on the map, as kind of being, you know, obvious signs were there that he was going to be one of the next big directors, and it was made for a more adult audience. And something about the first time I saw this, the impact it had on me, particularly with that twist ending, I was like, wow, a movie can do that. Like, it really blew my mind. And no matter how many times I watch it, I just find it's so interesting the way that puzzle is pieced together. Such a well thought out story, and just the unconventional way it's told as well. It never feels like it was trying too hard to be clever. It just works on so many levels. Love that movie to death. So a few films from Nolan for me really put him up there. Definitely one of the most talented directors around now, or that we've ever had. Number 5, going to go with James Cameron, and he's really the director I credit with getting me into action cinema, because when I was younger, action in itself never really did that much for me, you know, like endless shooting, car chases, explosions, all of that kind of stuff in itself didn't really excite me in the way it did some other people. But it wasn't until I saw Terminator, and particularly Terminator 2, that I realised like what an action film could really be. And it just made me realise that when you've got a great story and a director that understands characters and world building and stakes, then when you have action wrapped around it, you just find yourself being completely enthralled with everything going on. And that's what happened to me. And after that, I started to really get into action movies. It's such a sad thing, really, that in the last, 30 years, we've only had 3 movies from Cameron now. Titanic and 2 Avatar films. Movies that I actually still quite enjoy, but a lot of people aren't as hot on. I do kind of understand that. But just to think all of the stuff we could have had from him, you can't help but think about it as Cameron fans. But obviously he's had other interests throughout his life. But, he's iconic just for his action masterpieces he did back in the 80s and the 90s. For me personally, still my favourite of his, just by an inch, is Aliens. As I've said, because I love the world. And again, he's the master of the sequel, and I think coming after that original Alien film, the way he managed to build on that and create a really exciting sequel, more in line with the action genre, it's just absolutely masterful. Love this film so much. The expansion of the world and the characters. It's just 2.5 hours of pure adrenaline. It's one of my favourite movies of all time. So this and the Terminator films are, for me, what really cement him as a huge iconic director, and definitely one of my favourites of all time. Number 4 for me is going to be Stanley Kubrick. This is a director I've definitely come to appreciate just more and more over the years. And I think his first 2 films notwithstanding, everything he made after that, starting from The Killing, was nothing short of greatness, I don't think. Very interesting movies, all completely different from one another as well. That's something I really do appreciate about his work. When you look back at his filmography, he's just done so many classics in every single genre. His war films, absolutely iconic. Very interesting with the drama, I think, that goes on in them. Paths of Glory and Full Metal Jacket in particular are just really interesting films, very thought-provoking, and movies that you get more from every single time that you watch them. Saw 2001 for the first time last year, a film I have to mention. And I was kind of just surprised by how weird that film was as well. It's amazing that it was so big at the time that it came out, because it's very experimental and unusual in its way. But it's just an amazing experience. I loved watching it so much. And yeah, it's just I'm fascinated by Kubrick. He obviously revolutionised a lot of techniques in filming, because he manages to create an atmosphere, I think, that no other director can really capture quite like he can. The Shining, for me personally, still is absolute best, and sometimes I even wonder if this might be my favourite film, not just my favourite Kubrick film, my favourite horror film, but it's right up there for me. It's a bit of a generic pick as your favourite Kubrick, but there's a reason why so many people discuss and talk about this movie so many years later. It's truly a brilliant film, just so creative, so interesting, such a great atmosphere, unbelievable performance he got out of his actors, Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. There's just nothing quite like it. It's quite a hell of a film. So for that alone would put him right at the top for me. But Kubrick, an undeniable force of nature, and a director that it's a damn shame we lost him when he did, because I'm sure even as he got into his 70s, he was still seemingly at the top of his game, and I'm sure he would have come out with so many great movies after that too. Number 3 for me, I'm going to go with Martin Scorsese. Another one like Kubrick that I think just when you look back at his work, he's just done so many great films in so many genres. And when you think back to these kind of great directors, especially like Scorsese, he just knew how to mix up different tones within the same film and it always feel interesting and coherent. And I think that's why he excelled in so many different genres. Because, there's loads of directors out there that I do really love that do good films, but they kind of have one tone that's their thing. They know how to run with that, and that's what you expect from them. Whereas someone like Scorsese, he could come out and do something in a genre that someone would think, is that going to work? And he always managed to pull it off. And I've noticed this from watching his films over the last few years. There's certain things like the way he manages to blend drama and violence and human connections and humour all together in one film, and it always feeling coherent. There's nobody that can really do that like Scorsese. You know, these days a lot of people talk about long running times, people bitch about long films, and to some extent I can see where they're coming from, because I think a lot of films they're not rich enough or interesting enough to justify those long running times. But if you look back to Scorsese when he was at his peak, he really knew how to fill a long running time. Back when I watched his movies all the time, you never would notice the fact that they were 3.5 hours long, because they just absolutely fly by. They're always exciting, always fascinating to watch, taking you to a different time and place with characters that you'd never normally know in your everyday life. And I just get sucked into the world of his films. Such a wonderful director, and I've loved so many of his films. Almost impossible for me to pick my favourite, but I've got a little bit of an unpopular one actually. My favourite is actually Shutter Island. Just because when he did this, I thought I was really interested to see what he was going to do with a mystery kind of thriller. And this film, for me, every time I go along with it, no matter how many times I've seen it, and you dissect it, the twist, there's still something more to get from it. Just a great suspense film, a great mystery, and just very, very entertaining to watch. Helped by the fact, of course, you had Leo DiCaprio in the lead, and the whole thing came together perfectly. A really deep film, I think, and just an absolute masterpiece. So yeah, he's one of those directors that's just done a number of masterpieces now, will forever be one of my favourite directors. Number 2 for me, it's got to be Quentin Tarantino. No top 10 directors list is complete without Tarantino, in my opinion. Just obviously one of the most, if not the most distinctive voice in film, I think, over the last 30 years. And the thing I love about Tarantino is he obviously worked down from the bottom just with a true enthusiasm and passion for film. And I think you can really feel that with him. I think that's probably why his first film, Reservoir Dogs, just hit so hard when it came out. There's so much. It's just such an exciting and fresh movie. You can just feel the joy that's gone into making that film, and it obviously came across to a huge audience because people fell in love with it for obvious reasons, myself included. And I wish I was around. It was because obviously I was too young when those films came out, Reservoir, Pulp Fiction. So I would have loved to have known what it would have been like at the time as a cinema and film fan to be there when Tarantino was really taking off. It must have been amazing. But yeah, incredible director. Even on his worst days, like when you think of films that are slightly more underwhelming, I would say like maybe Jackie Brown or Hateful Eight, even those films I still give 4-star ratings. I think they're better than what most directors would make on their best days. He's a real force of nature, Tarantino, and never really hit a bum note in his career. Very exciting movies, done so many different things, and just really kind of walked away from conventional filmmaking. His films don't really ever follow a particular formula. If you describe Pulp Fiction probably to someone before that came out, people would have thought it wasn't going to work, but something about his style, his flair that he brings to those with his great dialogue, the way it's directed, just brings a spark, brings those films to life in a way that I don't think any other director is capable of. Tarantino absolutely making this list right up the top. Favourite film for me personally, sorry to be generic, it still has to be Pulp Fiction. Just because when I'm in the mood for a long movie, I sometimes wonder whether it's overrated just because of how much has been talked about. And then I sit down, I watch it, I get to the end and I'm like, no. Absolutely, this is why this movie gets talked about as one of the best ever made. So yeah, what a legend, Quentin Tarantino, right at the top of this list. But my pick for my number 1 director of all time won't probably come as a surprise to most people who know me, but that is going to be David Fincher. He just makes films that are really on my wavelength. If I love the thriller genre, I love deep, dark films with mysteries and great drama and deep characters. And I think there's nobody that does it like Fincher can. Within 5 minutes, it's one of his movies. And I just think he has an ability to create an atmosphere in his films with such an attention to detail that his stories are like nothing else. There's a reason why so many people love David Fincher and get excited about his films, because the kind of project he's picked, great projects over the years, and I think he's brought a flair to them that other directors wouldn't have been able to. Something about his work just really connects and resonates for me. And if you think back over the years, the films that he's done, Gone Girl, Fight Club, Seven, The Social Network, The Game, Panic Room, just so much great stuff. Even the first movie that he did, Alien 3, that he even disowned himself, I still hold up as being a pretty good film. So that's the kind of David Fincher fan that I am. I can just feel like I see the brilliance in his work, and he just made stuff that is perfectly designed for me. So yeah, easy pick for me as my number one favourite director. Favourite film, always such a tough one. For years I would have cited Fight Club as my favourite movie of all time. My late teen years, that just really hit something for me, just so mind-bending and dealing with so many themes that fascinated me at the time. That would have always been my top, but I just think recently, after going to see the 30th anniversary of Seven with my brother, I came out just wowed all over again. Like, no matter how many times I've seen this film, something about being there in the big screen, investing myself all over again. I was just, what an experience of a film. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. One of the best films ever made, in my mind. Such a gripping thriller. And as I say, David Fincher, right out the gate back in the 90s, making films like Seven. Come on, what's not to like? So guys, that is my top 10 favourite movie directors of all time. Hope you've enjoyed my video and my list. And like I said, I am doing this with my friends as well. They'll all be releasing videos at the same time. So all of the links will be down in the description box below. So go over there, enjoy their videos, and let them know that I sent you. Join me in the comments as well. Let me know your thoughts on your favourite movie directors of all time. And let's have some fun discussion. But anyway guys, until next time, do take care. And I'll see you soon.